What's up and welcome everyone to the Two Words podcast. And I know that this is not normally my introduction, my jovial introduction, but let's face it, this is not a jovial podcast. This is not the podcast I wrote to do. This is not the podcast I wanted to do, but it's kind of the podcast I think Matt and I need to do. Tonight, we are doing a podcast honoring the legendary Bray Wyatt, who passed away last week after a long bout with some sickness. And so we are going to do this show. We are still going to have fun. We're still going to joke around and enjoy things. But hopefully this show will be an homage to the great Bray Wyatt. How are you holding up, Matt?
I mean, it sucks.
I feel like guys our age, like, this sucks. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why. Are we middle-aged?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm middle-aged.
Depends on how long you plan to live.
That's a dark conversation you got to have with yourself. But you know, guys in that like 30 to 40 kind of range, like we really seem to be taking this hard across the whole thing. And welcome back to the Two Words podcast, where today our two words are Bray Wyatt. This last week, we lost such an influential part of our wrestling family. And even the day before, we didn't even talk about it, we lost Terry Funk.
Yeah.
Who I think in a lot of ways you can see inspired Bray Wyatt, at least in some way, shape, or form. And so tonight, we just kind of wanted to take an opportunity to feel our feelings, to say what we need to say, to be 12 years old, losing somebody that is important, because we were talking about this earlier. This feels different. Like, it feels so much different. And so
this feels similar to how Owen Hart, when he passed away, felt.
Oh yeah.
Now, Owen Hart was a bit more visceral because it happened in front of us.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's that kind of tragedy. There was so much more.
Yeah.
And now it's gone.
I think you're right. So, we first met Windham Rotunda as Cody Rhodes' NXT protege Husky Harris, the Army tank with a Ferrari engine, making it to the final 6 of the competition before being eliminated. The next time we would see him, he would come as a member of Wade Barrett's faction, the Nexus. He would remain with the group through CM Punk's time as leader, but would be written off with a head injury in 2011. In 2012, Rotunda officially debuted in Florida Championship Wrestling as Bray Wyatt, the menacing and provocative leader of the Wyatt family. Alongside his followers Luke Harper and Eric Rowan, Wyatt would terrorize the WWE universe, encouraging them to let him in and to follow the buzzards. His feuds with the likes of Randy Orton and Daniel Bryan, John Cena, and even The Undertaker solidified him as a force to be reckoned with. He even had what many would consider a successful tag team run with Matt Hardy. In April of 2019, after a significant time off television, ominous vignettes began appearing across WWE programming, depicting a sinister buzzard puppet, a witch doll, and other toys. Later that month, Wyatt would appear in pre-recorded segments as the host of the surreal children's program known as the Firefly Funhouse, sporting different hair, a shorter beard, and a leaner physique. The segments featured the puppets from the vignettes, a buzzard called Mercy, a reference to Waylon Mercy, who was the inspiration for Wyatt's previous gimmick, a witch named Abby, as well as new additions like Ramblin' Rabbit and Huskus the Pig Boy, a reference to Wyatt's previous gimmick as Husky Harris. There was even a puppet of Mr. McMahon that occasionally appeared. During the initial segment, Wyatt destroyed a cardboard cutout of his old self with a chainsaw, cheerily telling all of his viewers that all they had to do to light the way was to let him in. And, of course, who could forget the Muscle Man dance?
Yowie wowie.
Yowie wowie indeed. However, this new Funhouse Bray Wyatt was only the beginning, as The Fiend, a demon-like monster alter ego, would be introduced. The Fiend character would go on to have feuds with the likes of Finn Balor, The Miz, and Daniel Bryan, even winning the Universal title, a title he would eventually lose to start Roman Reigns' historic title run. After a few more feuds with Randy Orton and John Cena, Wyatt was released in 2021, but in 2022 was brought back after a long build-up of vignettes that sent Radio Matt spiraling. This version of Bray Wyatt that returned was more genuine and less supernatural, although there was a significant amount of the former as well, culminating in a match with LA Knight at this year's Royal Rumble. A match that would wind up being his last, as shortly he would be experiencing health complications that would lead to his death on August 24th of 2023. I read that, and I remember all of those things. Mm-hmm. And when you compact them into a couple of paragraphs, you really realize how much Bray Wyatt did in such an unbelievably short amount of time. Mm-hmm. For me, I immediately fell in love with the Eater of Worlds, Bray Wyatt. Mm-hmm. Like when they first started doing the Wyatt family vignettes, and they first had him appear. Like I remember watching Raw that night that they were like Michael Cole was visiting the compound, I think Byron Saxton was. Somebody was visiting the compound, and he was like looking around at this like swamp house, and he looks over, and there's just like Eric Rowan dragging something behind him, and he just kind of looks over and then just like keeps walking. And it was amazing, and he committed to it, and I think that's what made all of us older wrestling fans fall in love with that so much, because it was kind of holding on to this suspension of disbelief for us. Yeah. It was creating a character like what we had grown up with. What are some of your thoughts?
So I didn't get into Bray right away. I didn't give a flying flip about Husky Harris. I forgot he existed for the longest time.
I think most people's response was, is that Husky Harris?
He was the guy in the back. That's what I remember.
Is that Dean Cain?
Is that Dean Cain? No, but I didn't jump into Wyatt family right away. But it was when he started his program with The Undertaker, where he was declaring himself the new face of fear. Mm-hmm. That grabbed me, because I still am huge Undertaker stan. Mm-hmm. And so anything Undertaker was doing, I was all in. And this was cool. And I really wanted Bray to be the one to beat The Undertaker. This was prior to him losing, wasn't it? No, it wasn't. But it was supposed to be like, the idea was in my head that he would be retiring The Undertaker, essentially. Yeah. And becoming actually the new face of fear.
Yeah, but because it was the year after.
It was, that's right.
It was 31.
It was the year after. I knew it was close. And so when Undertaker won, I was actually disappointed. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't really developed that love for Bray Wyatt yet. But I was disappointed Bray didn't win. So it was from then on, though, that I was all in on Bray. But I loved so much the Firefly Funhouse Bray and The Fiend and that weird co-personality thing. Mm-hmm. I loved how The Fiend was, at least at the beginning, unbeatable. But if every now and then Bray would just wrestle as himself, and he would usually lose as himself. I loved how they made this two separate entities in the one body. It was, it's all stupid, unbelievable stuff, and that's kind of what made me love it. But
it was full commitment. It was a full commitment version of what Finn Balor does. And I'm not trashing Finn Balor, but they do the whole, I'm gonna bring out the demon.
Right.
Terrible Finn Balor impression, but. I'm gonna bring out the demon. You're after me, Lucky Charms. But like they do that. It's like, okay, but it's just going to be Finn Balor wrestling with face paint on.
By the end of the match, the face paint will be gone. And it'll just look like Bray Wyatt or Finn Balor anyway. But this was something different. It was always presented differently. I think the COVID break actually helped him because they got to do those kind of cinematic things, which allowed them to do even crazier junk. I loved it so much. And so when he got let go after that, just completely fumbled WrestleMania thing with him being all melted and whatever beforehand. That was fumbled. And that was not all Bray's fault. When he got let go, a part of my heart died. Like it was, I've never felt that way about a wrestler being let go. I'm like, there's no way. And so when they did, like you said, I lost my mind when they were doing the White Rabbit QR code teases and all this kind of stuff. And like I watched, a lot of people have been reposting on TikTok their reactions to Extreme Rules when, is he coming back? Is it him? That kind of thing. Everyone when he's got the whole world in his hands started playing at the end, people just losing their minds. And I'm just like, that's exactly how I felt I'm just like I can't believe it. It's actually happening. It's here. We're watching it. I've watched that whole 10 minutes of the tail end of Extreme Rules. Yeah. A dozen times or more. It was just so good. And seeing this new Bray Wyatt and the promise of this new story and this new Wyatt family faction thing that was coming was just so exciting. Like I was set for wrestling for the next decade. Here we go. I don't care if the rest of the industry burns to the ground. I'm here for the Bray Wyatt stories. And so to have him start to ramp that up, and then he came down with the whatever undisclosed illness he had. And so he was out. That was a huge bummer. But we expected him to come back. And we even had, I think it was just last week, we had like a good reporter, like he's doing great. He'll be back soon. And so whatever the illness was, that's not what took his life. He had COVID a few weeks ago. And apparently when he had it, it was pretty rough on his heart. And so the lower portion of his heart wasn't beating properly. And so they had, the doctor had advised him that he was at an elevated risk of having a heart attack right now until they could figure out how to rejuvenate that portion of his heart. And so they advised him to wear like a portable defibrillator, like one that you can attach to your person at all times. And this day he was not wearing it, went to take a nap, and passed in his sleep. Which at least it wasn't like a violent way to go. Like that's the way you want to go if you're going to go. But just truly sucks that this happened so young as he was rebounding from something that apparently was already life-threatening, because that's what the rumor has been. Whatever it was serious. And that's why he's been gone for so many months. And it hurts to have that excitement last week, like he's on his way. It's coming. They're going to start planting seeds again. We're going to do this. We're going to revamp it. It's time to go see whatever his next vision was, because the dude was fearless in the storytelling, man. Most of this stuff is his creation. And he's willing to take chances. He's willing for it to go out and suck, but most of the time it doesn't. And that's kind of the difference between him and a lot of other characters. I'm bummed. Yeah, well,
and I texted you when it happened.
Such a gut. I didn't believe it.
Yeah, well,
I went and Googled everything.
Yeah, I was having dinner with my daughter, and I don't know, somebody had sent it to me or something. And so I tried Googling it and was like, oh man, I almost called you because I didn't want you to find out.
It felt like a family member, right?
Yeah. It really did. And I think that, you talk about his fearless storytelling, when he came back, and I mentioned this on our Facebook, but there was like a very, at least it felt like there was this very obvious, real pain that he was invoking to tell that story. And like I texted you and I was like, I'm almost relieved that it's not what I thought it was, because because he had like genuinely convinced me that he was battling depression in that sense, like so very hardcore,
right.
And that's
usually what it is when it's this young.
That's
lately.
almost amazing that he could do that, while still holding on to like that supernatural kind of thing. And you know, you can't teach storytelling like that.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is, like, you know, he made it in such a way that all of these different moments in his life, he's tying together to create something like completely copacetic, so to say. Like he even like ties in like Husky Harris, and like that was just, you know, that was a scared little boy who didn't know, who was just trying to do what he was told, and like you believed that he was. I also, when I was thinking about it and I was putting this whole thing together, it's like he really changed a lot of people for the better. Like everything he touched turned to gold. Nobody would have cared about John Hubbard, Brody Lee, if it wasn't for his time with Bray Wyatt.
Yeah.
And they tried to ruin him. Like, if you remember, like, we're all old enough to remember the Bludgeon Brothers. WWE tried to ruin Luke Harper's career, and they almost did it.
And then you saw him go to AEW and immediately be a leader.
Oh yeah,
and everybody be encapsulated by him.
Yeah, like because of that.
Yeah.
Daniel Bryan became better at storytelling because of his stuff with Bray Wyatt. Randy Orton's career was kind of, I felt like it was kind of on a plateau, or even kind of angled down a little bit, and then he got in that with Bray Wyatt, and it's like, oh, this is perfect. Like,
started with them being tag team partners together, and then going up against each other, him being the one to burn down the Swamp House.
Yeah.
Like, all of this was crazy stuff.
So good.
But it made you care about Randy Orton a little bit more too.
And to take like what he did with John Cena at WrestleMania 30, which was perfection by itself. And then like a few years later, you call back to that, and the story is, I'm mad that you didn't hurt me more. Like, that was the story. And like, that's, you know.
Also, gotta say, kudos to WWE, because this was one time that they had like a call up that they didn't screw up,
and they didn't change it.
They were the Wyatt family in what was it, Florida Championship Wrestling,
FCW,
wherever they were, and they were the Wyatt family when they came here, and they did great. Wyatt family ran for a good while. It was a fantastic story from the beginning, and they recognized that at the beginning. Then Vince went nuts when he fired him, but Triple H was wise. He knew.
Yeah.
He knew. No, we need him back.
At the very least.
Once he got the chance, he brought him back.
Well, you know, I'm upset that I'm very upset that this has come to such an abrupt end, but I think that his contribution will always be visible to the final product. And honestly, Hillary and I were talking about it. It's like, he's worthy of being inducted into the Hall of Fame next year.
Absolutely.
Like, because of this, like, immediately to me.
Yeah. I would recommend, if you didn't catch the SmackDown from last week, catch it when it comes out on Peacock. Or I think they do they still do the shortened version on Hulu?
Yeah, they do the shortened version on Hulu.
But I would encourage you to watch the whole thing when it comes out. I think they're a month behind on Peacock. So when it comes out, go check it out.
Okay.
Because the tribute show was So good.
I caught a good chunk of it, but yeah.
It was so good. All the little nods, all the like some kind of sneaky references to LA Knights. Ended that promo on Miz with doing the run thing.
Yeah.
It was, got chills from that.
Perfect.
All that was really good. They've continued some of those tributes right now on Monday Night Raw this past week. Mm-hmm. Seth Rollins has the Fiend plates on his title belt.
Okay.
The nameplate.
I didn't notice
that.
that.
That was really cool. A lot of good like tributes on Twitter and stuff from like Alexa Bliss. Alexa Bliss couldn't make it to the SmackDown tribute show, but she put out a whole thing about her and Bray. Like it was really good. And well, I have one more thing I want to say, but it's not quite Bray. Do you have anything else to say?
No, you're good.
Okay. I didn't run this by you, but this has been kind of a rough week for us personally as well.
Definitely.
We have a friend in our life who also passed away way too young.
The next day.
The next day. And while he's not, somebody that anyone else here is listening knows, doing a full podcast on him, wouldn't make any sense. But it does make sense to us that I think that we should tribute this episode both to Bray Wyatt and to our close friend Shane Hill.
I think that's a fantastic idea.
Shane has been in our lives in several different ways, very close to your wife. Mm-hmm. He was a member of our praise band for a little while in our church. He attended our Celebrate Recovery for a while with us. And he's been struggling with Crohn's disease and a couple other things.
Yeah.
But this past week, he also passed away, which was really rough. As both the men we're talking about here had wives and children.
And again, you talk about somebody who walks into a room and you interact with, and when they walk away, you are a completely changed individual. Mm-hmm. And so, I totally believe that. And, maybe just that's what we learn from this. Mm-hmm. Go out and change people for the better. Be aggressively good to people.
Yeah.
I call it loving ferociously. Mm-hmm. And thank you for that, Matt. That was really wonderful. I don't know exactly how to end a show like this because we can't make jokes. And this isn't, again, this isn't even the podcast I had written. I had written a completely different podcast about movesets that I thought were stupid. Which we'll do next week. Next week. It'll be great. But I think ending with the last thing that Bray Wyatt ever put on Instagram might be the way to go. And so we will end on this. If you want to head over to our socials at 2wordsLTN, you'll find this podcast and all of our other podcasts anywhere social media, any social medias and anywhere podcasts are found. You can hear this, but I will just read this, and I think we will just play ourselves out, if that's okay with you.
Sounds good.
Wrestling is not a love story. It's a fairy tale for masochists, a comedy for people who criticize punchlines, a fantasy most can't understand, a spectacle no one can deny. Lines are blurred, heroes are villains, budgets are cut, business is business, but can be a land where dead men walk, where honor makes you elite, where demons run for office, and rock bottom is a reason to rejoice. Woo is an escape, a reason to point the blame at anyone but yourself for 2 to 3 hours, an excuse to be a kid again, and nothing matters except the moment we are in. Wrestling is not a love story, it's much more. It's hope. And in a world surrounded in hate, greed, and violence, a world where closure may never come, we all know a place that has hot and cold hope on tap, for better or for worse. Thank you, Bray.